and trying to teach editing is that if I go down this road in the wrong direction, I'm teaching you about a particular piece of software and not the concept of editing video overall. The fact of the matter is that I use a particular software called Adobe, and it's good for what it's good for, and it also sucks in a lot of ways as well. What just happened to my screen? That was weird. Can you still see my screen, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, something just glitched out really strangely there for a sec. That was weird. All is well. Okay. So yeah, I'm trying not to teach you about Adobe Premiere specifically because you know what? I actually wouldn't recommend maybe going down that road. There's a lot of idiosyncrasies with it, and I'm kind of over this software as it is. I actually shared with you in the chat, free high-end editing software there is DaVinci Resolve. If you need to get into like, you know, more than really basic editing, go with DaVinci Resolve for now. It's free, and there's a few like really high-end features that are locked off, but you probably won't have to worry about that. What I'm trying to teach you today are some of the basic fundamentals and kind of the philosophy and concepts of editing as well. Okay, just those sort of basic things. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my editing software right now, and we're going to start with that. So Adobe Premiere Pro 2022 is what we are using. If my computer chooses to work. There we go. Give it a hot minute. It's booting up on my other screen, and then I'll move it over, and we'll continue going here. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, Peggy, you're saying that you've used DaVinci Resolve, and yeah, it has tons of functionality and it's free and it's great, right? That's bingo, perfect. I'm going to leave that chat open because that is actually quite helpful. Okay, so new project. We're just going to go ahead and start one up just because we need to start something up. I'm going to call this, what are we going to call this? Valentine's Day Lonely Hearts Editing Class 2022. Okay, perfect. Just gonna go ahead and go okay. So again, every editing software you'll set up your project, and it'll go a little something like this, right? Boom. Okay, it's working. Oh, my computer's so glitchy, so I apologize. So editing software. It's always going to have a bin. Every editing software is always going to have a place. You see where it says import media to start here on the top left-hand side. All editing software is going to have that. It's going to have a place to put your footage. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is just, I had all this open and then it crashed. So give me 1 second here. I'm just going to grab some footage to pull in here to experiment with. There we go. Okay, so I've got some raw clips here straight off of my camera. These are 4K clips. You don't have to know what that means. It doesn't really matter. But the point is I'm simply going to just grab something here. Well, let's grab not that one because that was a bad take, I think. Let's just grab them all. Yeah. I'm just dragging and dropping it into the bin, okay? So again, this is going to be the same for most editing software. And now what we have is we have all the clips that were in that folder in our bin here. So again, just waiting for things to refresh here. Okay, so I'm working on, at work, like literally a couple hours ago, I was working on this Y video project. So I'm going to be using that as kind of the basis to explain a lot of these concepts to you. So this is my main subject for this video, and this is him talking. So first thing, all projects are going to have a bin. They're going to have a place to put your footage. When you create new things inside of the editing program, they're also probably going to appear over here as well. So there's always going to be a bin where you're going to want to start with your footage, okay? There's always going to be a preview window. There's always two windows in an editing program, okay? There's always going to be a preview window to start. So when I click on footage in my bin, it comes up in my preview window. I can go ahead and play
Rob
it.
Saik here. You're here because something about AgVisor Pro caught your eye. It's more than a consulting marketplace, more than a forum.
Can you guys hear what I'm playing right now, like the audio of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure. Okay, perfect. So basically there's your start, right? I can see my bin, I can see a preview of the footage, right? So first thing is like there's going to be different shortcuts for different programs, but fundamentally speaking, like if I want to grab a piece of this clip, there's always going to be a way to set an in point and an out point. All right, that's going to just say I want that part. Now I'm just going to literally take this clip and drag it down to my sequence area here. So what we're talking about today is called linear editing. Okay, linear meaning in a line. Linear also begs the fact that there is in fact non-linear editing. Don't worry about that. That's a whole other bugaboo that we're not going to worry about. But in linear editing, you're always going to be working in time, left to right. Okay, and then you're on top of working left to right, you're also going to be able to work up and down. So on this first track, video 1 here, this is my first layer. As I add video to layers above it, they're basically just stacking those layers on top of each other. So I can build a project like vertically like that by stacking footage, and then in time, it's going to go sequentially like this, okay? So every piece of editing software is going to have a sequence, okay? And this is what the sequence is here, okay? That's this whole linear thing down here. And then as you can see, this other window up here, the program window, is where I'm seeing what is on the sequence. So generally speaking here for editing, we've got the bin, we've got the preview window, which is showing me what I'm looking at in the bin. We've got the timeline, and then we've got the program window, which is showing me what I've done on the timeline, okay? So every editing program more or less will be set out this way. Now, keep in mind, right, there are different ways of organizing this workspace as well, right? So like if I pick a different layout, things change a little bit. It looks a little bit different, right? So it may not look the same on start, but what I'm saying is fundamentally all editing programs are going to function in this way, okay? Again, we've got the video track here. We've got the audio track here. So just a couple of things to start with in terms of getting going here. When I talked about layering things up, right, I'm going to just create some text here so you can see what I mean. This is sample text. Okay. Now you see what this has done is the editing program has created sort of another block above the footage. And I know it's above because I can see it on top in the program window, right? It's working top down. It's like you're looking down through the layers of what you're building from the top down, okay? So again, by that logic, if I put his clip on top of that text, I no longer see the text, right? If I put the text on top of that, now I can see the text. All editing software is going to have a way of manipulating the parameters of what you are seeing on your program screen, okay? So in this case, it's effects controls here. And this is where you can play with things like scales of stuff, you know, the rotation of things, all of that, okay? So that's an important aspect of it as well. Here's another aspect of editing that's really crucial too. All editing is going to involve keyframes. And so this is another part where you're getting a little bit outside of what you might be able to do on like your phone on TikTok or something like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and set the rotation of this to 0. I'm going to set the rotation point. Ooh, can I do that? Hang on here. Can I screw around? Oh, I don't want to. Oh, there we go. Okay. So keyframes. As we move through time here on the timeline, you can see this line here is also moving kind of up here in the effects controls. So what keyframes allow me to do, I can just activate some of these different keyframes here. What keyframes allow me to do are change different parameters of this text over time, okay? This is a concept that's really important in editing. Like if you want to zoom in on a clip, if you want to make text rotate, if you want to make text kind of come in and then go out, this is where keyframes come in. It's an essential concept in editing. Remember keyframes because they'll always help you out. So I've set here in time, remember we're moving through time here. I've set some nodes, like some keyframe nodes. What I'm going to do here is move forward through time a little bit, and then I'm going to set some new ones, okay? So now I've got keyframes set here and I can change stuff. Like let's change the scale. Okay, let's change the rotation. Let's change where it is on the screen. All right. If I go back to where I started, it's going to go back to where I started. Now what we're doing is, as we're moving over time, the thing is changing in the way I want it to change. Okay, so that's keyframing. That is a pretty critical function. Another thing that's really important in editing is the concept of layering. So let's do a different example. I'm going to take this away here. Okay. I'm going to make a colored block. New item, color matte. Sure. Let's make it red. Why not? Okay. Red color. So as again, say I just made something in the program. Like I said, when I make things, they're going to generally appear in the bin. Doesn't matter what kind of software you're using. What I'm doing here now is I'm dragging that thing I made, which is a red color block, and I'm dragging it over to the screen here. Now, like I said before as well, right? I can play with the parameters of these different blocks in the linear editing program somewhere. In this case, it's effects controls. I'm just going to take this red block. I'm going to scale it down a little bit, say like this size. Okay, let's do that. And I'm going to take this text and I'm going to scale it down so it fits in the box. I'm going to move it into the box. Okay, now we talked about keyframes, right? Like I set a keyframe here on the text. I move it through time. I set another keyframe here. I can move this, right? So it starts here and then it moves off screen.
You're here because something in AgVisor.
Great. The problem is here, though, is that what if I want the red box to move along with it, right? Grouping is another really fundamental philosophy when you're talking about linear editing. So in this way, what I'm going to do is in Adobe, it might function a little differently in other programs. It might be called grouping. It might be called nesting. In this case, it's called nesting. So what if I want the text to move with the box, the two things together? Like what if I want to keyframe those together? This is where grouping comes in. It's very Photoshoppy if you've ever played with that, right? I'm going to nest these two things together. That nested sequence I just created is showing up here. So now these two things are locked together, right? So now it's actually pretty interesting. I can click on the nested sequence. I can go back to where I have just these two elements. Let's say in here, I wanted to make this text, say I wanted it to start really small in the box and then get big like this. So now that's going to do it there. Perfect. Okay, so we've done that. Now, if I go back to my main sequence, I've got, obviously, the text is doing that with the box. Okay, and now I can take the box and that moving text, and I can keyframe that. Oop. And we can move those two things together. So now we've created like a sequence of events, right? So like we've got a thing happening in the box, and then the box is doing its thing as well. Okay. So those are a couple of the really fundamental philosophies. Now, another huge part of editing, when you're talking linear editing, is compositing, right? Now, we've talked a little bit about how like I've created this nested sequence. I've got this red box with the text. It's clearly laying on top of the footage of this guy. Great. There's ways I can play with the opacity of these layers, right? So we've all heard of green screen before, right? We've all seen that idea in movies where if you're standing in front of a screen that's green, you can key out the green component and it becomes clear, right? So in this case, I can do that same thing in a couple of different ways here. And I just want to show you this because it's important. In the effects controls here for this layer, I can play with the opacity of this, right? So effectively set it at like 29%. And that's just like, you know, fading that first layer out a little tiny bit, right? There are different ways of playing with that opacity though, right? Like there's different sort of math that you can do to blend those layers. And this is compositing in a nutshell, right? Like this is how you do a lot of these different kinds of, you know, weird video effects. Like that makes his shirt look cool. You kind of like blow that up. See, we're playing with stuff. We're getting different effects, right? There you go. So there are ways of manipulating the opacity of the layers above to affect the layers below. Another critical way I can demonstrate that here is with an adjustment layer. Every editing program is going to have a way of creating a completely clear layer above the layer below. So in this case, it's called an adjustment layer. And like I'm saying here, you can think about it like if the footage of this guy was a picture on a table, an adjustment layer is like a piece of saran wrap that you put over top of the photo. And now when I draw on that layer, it's not affecting the layer below, right? So this is usually pretty helpful for things like color correction. And we're not going to get really deep into color grading today because it's pretty intense. So you'll notice here too, is I'm looking at effects. All video programs will have various effects, right? So this will be like audio manipulation stuff. It'll be video manipulation stuff. It'll be different kinds of transitions. We'll get into all of that here. All I'm doing right now is I'm just grabbing some color grading to show you how an adjustment layer works. So I've added color correction here. So whatever I do to this adjustment layer is going to affect everything below it. Okay. So in this case, like I'm just gonna make the color look a little bit better because the way this is shot is to make it highly manipulatable in post-production like this. So I'm just trying to like even out some stuff like the color temperature, whatever. Not trying too hard here. Pop that up a little bit. Sure. So color correction. So I've done that to the adjustment layer. That means that if we're moving through time,
you're here
adjustment layer, and just gonna make this a little bit bigger. We got the adjustment layer. When the adjustment layer goes away, so does the effect, right? You can see that too. We put another layer underneath.
Something
that's kind of subtle, but it's there. So anyways, this is really basic, right? This is just the basic start. We've got all these different takes of this guy doing a bunch of different stuff, a Christmas greeting, whatever. The purpose of this video that I'm actually building right now is it's for a company called AgVisor Pro. It's a why video. It's supposed to kind of give people a sense for the company. So I'm going to close this test program right now. And I'm going to show you guys sort of where an editing program goes, or sort of where an editing session kind of goes as you work on it and kind of how complex it can get. So let me just find the one here. Again, stop sharing for a second. Does anybody have questions so far? Come on, that was dense information. Somebody's got to have something they need clarity on. Anybody? No? Hey, Carl.
Hey, Nick.
How's it going, buddy?
It's going pretty well. I'm enjoying this so far. I use Adobe as well, but yeah, it gets complex. And thanks for teaching us.
No problem. I kind of have been not liking Adobe lately. They've updated things in a way that doesn't work with my computer so well anymore, and it's made my life a hassle. Okay, so I've got my editing program back opened up here. Same clip was my basis to start with this. Oh, wait, I didn't share sound. Hang on. There we go. Okay. So that same clip is my basis for this video that I made. So we're just going to watch a little bit of this so you can get a sense for it. Again, we've got...
we're seeing just your notes.
Yeah. Oh, wrong slide. That's all right. There we go. We're back on track.
Yeah, we're good.
All right. So same exact concept here. I've got the bin. Okay. Now this bin has been filled up with different stuff because I've been working on this project, right? So we've got like, this is a whole other thing. There's different pieces that I've made here. There's different footage. Like this was the raw footage that we were working with originally. I've brought music into this because I needed to have music involved. Nut milking is not what it sounds like. That's like actually an agriculture project, but I needed footage from that. So I've taken everything I could possibly need for this project. I've brought it in, and then this is kind of where I've gone with this footage, right? So again, really same exact thing we've been looking at here. I've got the clip, that we're working with, the audio for the clip involved, and then we've got moving through time, and we've got stacked layers of different stuff happening here. So as I play this, you'll get a sense for what's happening here.
Hi, Rob here. You're here because something in AgVisor Pro caught your eye. Well, it's more than a forum, it's more than a social network, it's more than a consulting marketplace. What makes AgVisor Pro and the people who use it special is our shared passion for informed perspectives and our desire to spend less time searching for good answers. In order to survive in the industry, farmers are expected to be experts at everything. A biologist who understands plant physiology, a market expert who can buy low and sell high, a mechanic who knows equipment, a financial expert who can grow a business on small margins. When I set out to build AgVisor Pro, I knew there had to be a better way to connect agriculture to its experts. We believe agriculture works best if we can all rely on trusted experts who know what we don't. The problem is connecting with those unbiased experts. Finding a person who can solve your problem more than just selling you a product is tough. There is no way to fix this dynamic until we demand better and decide to pay for it. We need a system that funds knowledge, that surrounds a farmer with expertise and advice. This is the system that AgVisor Pro is building. We exist to connect you to professionals who will help you and your farm level up. So sign up today and get what you pay for. Unbiased expertise, knowledge, and insights. Help us to build the most independent, unbiased platform by supporting independent experts. Thank you.
Okay, so that's what I'm working on here. It's like, what is that, minute 45 seconds long? But again, you can see all those fundamental pieces that we've been talking about in play now, right? So again, that main clip, if I go ahead and I take everything else away here, like let's just go back to very, 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 very basics here. I'm gonna do this. Take this all away. So again, if we go back to basics, this is how I always start these kinds of projects. Now, again, it's so hard to like, I don't know what kind of stuff you guys are going to be making, right? It could be anything, but what you can see here is like all this footage that I've taken here. This is all footage that I've taken over like my 20-year career in various times and aspects. It's from different cameras. It's all different kinds of stuff, drones, whatever. But this is my point, right? Is like, you've all got a great camera. You can all go out there and get footage, be it stock or from like people who've already gotten it out there and, you know, borrow it. It's about assembling it into a narrative. That's what editing really brings to the picture, right? I mean, if we go back to the basics here, like, first of all, this guy talking is my dad, funnily enough, and he is horrible at following a script, like horrible at it. He was supposed to be talking through this whole video, and yet he had to literally like read the script because he couldn't, he's just not great at it. So what I basically have here is to start, I have his video and his audio, and I'm like, okay, that's how we're going to bring in the
Pro caught your eye.
intro.
Well, it's more than a forum. It's more than a social network.
And then he had like a 5-minute take of him talking through this script, right? And for a 1:45 long video, I just took the best parts of it. And like, that's what you see here, right? Is no video with this, just the audio from the video. I've removed the video aspect, but you see.
What makes AgVisor Pro and the people who use it special is our shared passion for informed perspectives and our desire to spend less time searching for good answers. So generally speaking, what I'll do here is like, I'll lay out this base layer, right? In this case, I know the video is a person talking, so that's going to be kind of my base. I'm going to lay that out. I'm going to get that where I want it to be. And then that's kind of where I'm going to start working with it. And I already know, right? I want to have him on screen at the beginning, and I want to have him on screen at the end. Okay. And then in the middle, I've got to show all this other stuff to kind of speak to what he's talking about, right? So this is another, you might be filming interviews and stuff that you're doing, right? And, showing somebody talking for 10 minutes is really, really boring. It's very easy to cut away
to footage that references what they're talking about. You know, you can find that kind of footage on stock footage sites, depending on your subject matter. But it's a really good way to make something interesting and enticing, right? Like if I had him just talking to the camera through this whole thing with no music, you're not going to get any point across. The work involved in the artistry here means you're going to be stuck to this for 1 minute and 45 seconds. Part of the challenge these days is that people don't have a very long attention span. So whatever kind of message you're trying to get across to people, you know, the exercise as an artist, especially when you're working in video, because the medium just begs for shortness, you're trying to get it as squeezed as possible, right? And I mean, I think the first version I did of this was much longer, and there's even shorter versions over here that I did for other purposes. But I've got this base, right? So the next thing that I'm gonna bring in is the music, and that's what this layer is. So now we're starting to. This is exactly how I would do it. This is the order I would do it in. So I have that base layer, I have the audio from that, and the next thing I'm going to bring in is the music. I always kind of bring in the music really early in the process if I'm able to, for a couple of reasons. One, it really informs the emotion of the thing that you're making. And two, it also informs the timing of it, right? Because it's not that you necessarily cut to the beat, that gets a little bit obvious and repetitive, but there is a cadence to the song. And if you don't bring in the song until after you've edited the picture, that can be tricky. You're going to have to go back and adjust things after so that it all kind of flows. So I like to get the song in. And that's not to say, you know, you have to have a song for the whole project or whatever. You can bring a song, fade it out, you can fade a new one in, whatever. But once I get the dialogue kind of sorted out and I've cut all those pieces out and I figured out what I wanted. Oh, and let's just talk about that really quick too. All editing programs will have their own set of keyboard shortcuts that you're going to want to learn because it makes life much easier, but they're all kind of fundamentally the same. There's always going to be like a razor tool, and when you use that, you can cut a clip into. So when I'm saying here, like, okay, I've made all this audio stuff, like, okay, well, how did you do that from one clip? This is how, like, you literally just cut it apart, and then you can delete pieces of it, you know, you can delete that piece, move this piece over here. That's kind of how it all works, right? So like let me just undo all that. Okay. So yeah, like I would bring, this project started as this whole 10-minute clip of him talking, and then all I did was cut out the bad parts and then squeeze the good parts together, right? So that's how I got this base layer. Next thing I wanted to do is make him look good, right? So we talked about that clear layer, the adjustment layer, bring that in, right? So with a little bit of work, and all this one has on it, I think for effects, is color. So that's all I'm doing here on this adjustment layer, is playing with the color. And in this case, you can see the effect it has. Like we've gone from that really not great looking kind of blanched out image to something that has a little bit of saturation, really pops, right? Color correction is awesome. I like me some color correction. So same thing, I'm going to do that kind of on the back end here. You know, there we go. All right, so we've got the base. And now when we listen to that same dialogue again, like I'm going to just mute the music for a second. Let's hear this.
Marketplace. What makes AgVisor Pro and the people who use it special is our shared passion for
okay, shared passion. I don't give a shit. Whatever. That doesn't matter to me. But you add the music.
What makes AgVisor Pro and the people who use it special is our shared passion for informed perspectives and our desire to spend less time searching for good answers. In order,
and you can see too, right? Like, why did I leave spaces when he's talking? Well, this is part of bringing the music track in, right? It's like I've got this dialed in so that there's a drop when he's not talking, right?
I'm searching for good answers. In order to survive in the industry, farmers are expected to be experts at everything.
Sweet. Okay, so now we're getting that base layer down, right? And now it's just a question of like, hey, what serves the purpose? So Again, in my case, I kind of have a huge library of stock footage. And so I'm able to pull from that. But a couple of things you'll see here, another few fundamentals. You'll see a couple numbers change between these two clips. Like these are the same clip. This is clip 24. It's a guy walking away from the camera, right? When we play it though, slow motion, fast motion. Okay, so there's a little bit of a difference there. I shot this in slow motion. So the original clip is in slow motion, and you can see it's wider, right? Here it's a little bit tighter. So like I said with this, you can play with parameters, right? So in this case, I can take this clip that is, you know, a given size for the screen, and I can adjust it so that it's a little bit framed a little bit differently, right? These are all kinds of different adjustments you can make, right? I also played with the speed. You'll notice like this was slow motion. And then here it says 600% because it's 600% faster, right? So when I'm building these projects, this is how I do it. I just go block by block, right? I have these clips over here. I'm gonna just like find this revealing project. So this is this clip. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm listening to the audio he's saying, right? Like farmers are expected to be experts at everything. Is that what he says?
What makes AgVisor Pro and the people who use
the people who use it. Okay, so he's like farmers, talking about farmers. I'm going to show farmers. Now, I know in this nut milking project that I had clips of farmers. So I go find this clip of a farmer. I find the bit that I wanted. I drag it down to the timeline. And this is how we're building, right? So bit by bit, a project like this kind of starts to come together. And if I do this correctly, I'm just going to kind of drag pieces over at a time. Try not to screw this all up. So I've got these clips here. It's like, you know, this sequence of this guy. Notice I've kind of just put it on its own video track. And this is just kind of an organizational thing to keep track of what I'm doing when I'm editing. You know, so this guy's on this track, and then I cut to this farmer. Okay, his two clips are down there. Same thing here, right? You notice that I have the original clip of this farmer is 50, like scaled at 50%. And then this one's at 150. So we've really gone in on it. It's at 150. The same thing, right? I'm just building a story. And as we go, we're hearing it, watching it.
What makes AgVisor Pro and the people who use it special is...
Okay, so there you go, right? And this is literally just, this is how you do it, right? I'll show you guys another little technique that is really, really fun that I like to use quite a bit here too. And then I'm going to stop in about 4 minutes here so we can get some questions done, because that was a quick time. Remember I was talking about opacity before as well? So here's a great example of how to add some flavor with this kind of stuff, just to give you a sample of what this looks like. So I've collected some film burns. So back in the day when you know, you were using film in a projector, you'd have instances of the film like burning and roasting and doing kind of weird stuff on screen like this, right? It's like, okay, that's a weird abstract element. How is that going to be useful to me? Well, remember we were talking about opacity before, right? So these film burns add some really cool techniques here, and you'll notice what I did. So I've changed. First thing I have done here is the opacity. I've changed the kind of opacity. If I was normal, you get nothing. Like it's just blank, right? You can't see through it. When I go to overlay, I'm changing the way that the math is done between those two layers, and now it's subtracting the black, subtracting the darker color from this clip, not the lighter color. And then what I'm doing with it is, remember keyframes, we were talking about that before. So I'm taking the opacity of this clip from 0, and then as it moves through time, I'm taking it up to 100% opacity, and then I'm taking it back down again. And the timing of this is such that you see what else I have going here is I have a layer here. If I shut off the layer above, this is a color block. That's just a piece of white. And all it's doing is the same thing. It's fading from 0 opacity up to 100 and then back down. And it's doing that over a cut. And it's also doing that over a drop in the music. And so what I'm doing here is I'm using an abstract piece of film to add some texture, I guess, to this. So if you watch what happens now in this, keep in mind here, right? We've got a drop in the music. This is where the music goes boom. We've got the cut timed here to go with the drop, because the drop is actually on that little marker there. And then we've got the opacity of that top abstract layer coming up and down. And then we've got a white layer coming up and down to obscure the footage below. And so what we get is a really cool cut.
Less time searching for good answers. In order to survive.
I had the top layer off. Sorry, guys. Here we go. Try again.
Less time searching for good answers. In order to survive in the industry.
Very subtle, right? But it's something there. So I'm just going to bring in the rest of this stuff here because we are almost out of time. And you'll see that same effect. Like these blue clips are those abstract ones that I've used as a sort of a transition. Another example of it here too.
A biologist who understands plant physiology.
Oh, that's missing something. Oh, wait, hang on. I got this mistimed.
You're good on time. We have 15 minutes left, so only like, yeah, you can do more.
Okay,
like,
cool.
Yeah, don't worry. Don't rush.
No, it's all good. So this is another thing too, is I'm using these textures as a way of separating different topics of footage, if that makes sense. So like, you know, I'm building this, like he's talking about people in this part, right? So I'm showing people, and we go through the people section, and then like next thing I need to talk about is crops, but like people and crops. What do I do there? Well, I'm using the music to my favor because there's a drop there, so it's a natural transition, and then I'm adding a visual transition kind of on top of that to transition now to a new topic of footage. All right, so now we're into like wheat shots, right? Beautiful wheat. And I'm like, okay, we're switching topics again. You notice like these cuts are happening at the same time he's switching to a new topic, right? So there's a reason for this. And now we're into a different crop, a different footage, a different topic. And a lot of this is sloppiness too. Like the nice thing about a linear timeline is you can play around with it a bit, right? So like what is happening here? I have 3 clips stacked on top of each other. If I was being a little more fastidious about my editing, it would actually look like this, because see, no clip is actually interacting with the ones below it. In that case, I was just being lazy, and I have all these clips overlapping. But the reason this is kind of nice is because, like, okay, between this clip and this clip, I have a gap. And I want to show this footage, but like now I can kind of play with the timing of it, right? Like I can kind of, I wanted to start here more. So a little bit of this overlapping is because it gives me some flexibility to kind of move stuff around and play with it. And in linear editing, again, you're working with the advantage that if your top layer is opaque, you're not going to see anything below it. So you can kind of leave stuff down here. Also, when I'm editing, like, you know, I might have been like, okay, I really like these shots here, but you know what? There were those other shots from over here. Like maybe it was this shot I liked more, right? So okay, you know, which one do I want? Hard to say. In this case, I just kind of leave the second clip underneath the first one. It has no bearing on what you're seeing. But for me as an editor, I know that second option I wanted is right there. It's close at hand, right? So these are just like kind of little tips and tricks. And then lastly speaking, just so that we're all getting a sense for this too, I do want to show you guys one thing, which is really important. When you're setting up a sequence here like this, you'll notice that our window here is a TV shape, right? In the world that we live in nowadays, you will sometimes be working on a project that is like 90 degrees to that, like a phone, right? I hate it, but vertical video is a thing we have to live with nowadays. So every video editing software too, right? It will have the ability to change the shape of the square of your program window. So in this case, we have it set up, 16 by 9, 1920 by 1080. That's very typical. If we wanted to make this video for TikTok, though, we'd actually flip those numbers around. So this would be 1080 and this would be 1920. And this is going to mess things up. But you see, now we've changed the shape of the square, right? We haven't changed anything else in relationship to that though, like my adjustment layer, where you can kind of see here the footage obviously like cuts off. If I wanted to make this work, I'd have to make that a little bit bigger, and then I'd have to take this adjustment layer too, which you can kind of see here, and I'd have to make that a little bit bigger as well. But see, we can change the whole shape of everything there. Like it's not a difficult thing to do. There, I'm gonna change this back. Because I know that in a lot of contexts, again, depending on what you're doing, a lot of times you'll be making stuff for social media or for like digital consumption, and you'll want to be editing in this way. That's fine too. Just showing you that that can be done in any decent editing software. So the last thing here too is you've taken all this footage in, can come from various different places. You've made something with it. You're happy with what it is. The only other aspect to these programs that might, strike you as strange or not know is exporting, right? Like, how do I publish this essentially? So every editing program is going to have an exporting tool. Oh, I jumped the gun here on something. Hang on. Come on, software. There we go. Okay. I've got all this stuff happening on the timeline here, right? What am I exporting? Remember we were talking about in and out marks before, like here, like I can set an in mark and an out mark, and I'm just taking that part of the clip versus, the entire stinking clip like that, right? With what's on my timeline, like with what I've built, I've got all these different instances of this video, all these different versions. I can also use in-out marks here just to select that I'm only going to take this part of what I've been working on. This is also really helpful if, like, say you've given a lecture like this, right? And you've got a recording of it, like, will be available. And there's just that 4-minute section that you need to pass on to somebody else in your group because it was about something they're working on. You could bring that Zoom clip into editing software, and then you could just select that 4 minutes, cut everything out, and now we're going to export it. So the exporting side of it is very straightforward. All you're doing is you're saying to the program, this is how I want the file to be. This is the format I want the file to be, and this is where I want to save it. So again, any editing software is going to have various options here for how to export stuff. This can get really needlessly deep. H.264, that'll work for nearly everything. You're going to have different quality settings for most stuff too, like whatever. You can have higher low qualities, which will affect the sizes of your files from like gigabytes down to megabytes, right? The higher quality you make, obviously, the bigger it's going to be. This is another thing though too, right? Like, let's say somebody's like, oh, you know what? I just want the audio from that thing. I don't want the video. Like, how do I separate the audio and the video? Well, this is how to, is if I have video and audio together, I kick it into an editing program, put it on a timeline, and then here I can just say I want an MP3. That's only going to export the audio, right? Obviously, it can't export video if it's an MP3. H.264, that's a video codec that is really easy to play on all devices, which is why you go with that. And then it's going to do the audio as an MP3 file, and then it wraps those into a .mp4. So an MP4 file, you're probably familiar with those. They're very common video files. And all we're going to do now is I'm happy with all this. It's going to export at a high bit rate. It's going to export to, my downloads folder. Why not? And we're going to export. Oh, God bless, my computer is running fast today. That's impressive. I'm happy with that. Yeah, so this is just exporting, and then what you'll be left with is a file that you can share, upload to YouTube, do whatever you need to do with, right? So that's kind of the pipeline. Your video footage can come from anywhere at any time. Most editing programs worth their salt will be able to take all kinds of different footage in different formats, throw it on the same timeline. Get creative with it, have some fun, experiment with it, and then you're kicking out something that is, an amalgamation of all that work that you've done. And I really liked video. I like editing because it's bringing it all together. It's a really fun exercise, right? I mean, I could say it could subsume all other art forms, because everything else that you guys are going to learn in this course, you could film it and then make a video of it. And ipso facto, video is superior. That's all I have to say. So I hope you got something out of that. Do we have any questions or anything for the last 5-6 minutes here? I know that was a lot. I hope it was understandable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can start with a question while other people are thinking. When you have audio that's like not very good, like to what extent can you improve that in like editing phase of the work?
To an absurd extent, actually. So I shared like the coolest thing I've ever seen that I literally found last week that has been my saving grace for the last little while here. That Adobe Enhance stuff, unbelievable. So again, I'll just share again here really quick. Let's do this. So just as an example, like I found this, I found this.
Oh, you're showing us the notes again.
I know. I'm looking for the, where is the Zoom thing here? Chat, there it is. Sorry, there. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so I found this thing the other day. Honestly, you don't even have to learn anything about audio because this tool is so unbelievably amazing. I worked with a couple of guys doing a podcast for them, and one of the guys always has really terrible audio. Let me, that's not it. Let me close that. So this is what I get from the guy usually.
Hey, welcome back everybody. This is another edition of the shit you need to know from AgVisor Pro.
So you can hear that pretty clearly.
And
like a lot of top end, no low end in that audio. There's a high pitched whine through the whole thing. You can hear him like hand noises. Freaking brutal. And this would take me hours and hours and hours as a professional to get it dialed in and sounding decent. But now with AI, you just drag that into this thing and it does its magic and spits you back a clip. And check this out.
hey, welcome back everybody. This is another edition of the shit you need to know from AgVisor Pro.
So between
And
you,
hey, welcome back everybody. This is another edition of Hey, welcome back everybody. This is another edition of the
it's unbelievable. So my advice is to like keep it simple. That software for like most basic stuff, it's unreal. Like it's absolutely unreal.
Wow.
Yeah, like that's saved my butt. We're doing a podcast over Zoom with like people on horrible connections and stuff. I can just put the audio through that and it sounds like everybody was in a room on like a Joe Rogan microphone. Like, you know, it sounds like good.
Yeah, that's
even if what he's saying is not good, but still good. What are your thoughts on planning videos before getting to the editing software? Like, do you ever plan background images, transitions? Very rarely. That might have more to do with the fact that I have aphantasia and I don't have a mind's eye, so I don't really visualize things. I don't plan in that way at all. So yeah, like planning stuff, not really. And you know what, today, like back in the day of film, you had to be disciplined about what you captured because every foot of film was a dollar value. Everybody has a 256 gig SD card. Shoot more than you need. That is my advice to everybody: is overshoot, and then worry, don't go crazy on it, right? Like, know what you need, of course, but like don't be afraid to just kind of go off on a creative tangent with your camera and try something new or experiment. Like, you know, hang your camera from a rope on a tree and swing it around, see what happens. That's how I kind of started going on stuff. Like, I'll show you guys something really fast here. Just right around that regard, like just take advantage of the fact that equipment is cheap and it is accessible and it's easy to throw around and use. Like when I was this would have been like what, 11 years ago now. I was out with my friends and I was like, hey, I have a GoPro, and everybody got hula hoops. And I was like, hey, freaking sweet, GoPro on a hula hoop. And why did I film that? I didn't have a reason to film it.
I don't think we can see it. It's
Oh,
like
what? Are we doing the thing again? Damn it.
well, it's the video. Oh yeah, it's in
I
the,
know, okay, hang on. It's the dual monitor thing is killing me today. Sorry. So again, I had a GoPro, I had a hula hoop. This is my little sister, and we just like attached the two things together and filmed it, and like pretty cool. Yeah, that's a fun one because again, you don't know what'll happen until you film it. So you might as well just film it and see what you get. Is kind of my point on that, right? And I mean, that clip I made thousands of dollars off of licensing it, and GoPro sent me a bunch of free gear. And what else? Yeah, that was just a really fun little thing to do. So I recommend just like experimenting with stuff. Let me try to pull up the chat again here. The software for that Adobe thing, yeah, all those clips, just if you scroll up in the chat, you'll see I shared a few different things there. The other thing that I shared were a couple of stock footage sites. So, you know, with respect to getting out there and filming stuff, like if I need a shot of wheat that I don't have, I'll just go to a stock footage site and get one. My favorite stock footage site is this one. It's called Envato. It's like 13 or 16 bucks a month or something. Like it's really inexpensive. And like this has stock video of any flavor you could think of, like just search something. It's also got stock music. So like when I need music for something,
Audio Jungle.
like this will have the quality to kind of pull it off, right? So those 4 links that I shared, pretty helpful in just kind of like amassing stuff together. And then I'll just put one more too in there. If you go to YouTube and you're curious about some of the stuff that I've done in the way that I know Carl, you can go to YouTube and you can search No Ideas Media. That was my channel. I have stopped producing YouTube videos, but all the stuff that I'm talking about in terms of like building stories and making stuff compelling, go check that out because it's all science stuff, and science is boring, but we make it fun with video.
yay. Thank you, Nick.
No problem.
So I guess we're perfectly at 5 o'clock. But so I guess we should let everyone go, including you. But this was incredibly useful. I'm definitely gonna use that audio software for our podcast through SciComm. So yeah, it helped for that. And
Yeah, that audio stuff is gold. And like I said, you know, don't worry about the software that you get. Honestly, even if you're on Max iMovie, it'll get you a long way there. Just play around. Like I've been doing this for 20 years, so you know, it's an art form. It's just like everything else you guys are learning. It takes practice. But this is the practice. That's what you kind of saw today.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I'll stop the recording.